World War I, also known as the Great War, was a global conflict that lasted from 1914 to 1918. It was the first major war of the 20th century and involved the major powers of Europe as well as several other nations from around the world and claimed over 16 million lives. At the turn of the 20th century, Europe was divided into two powerful alliances: the Triple Alliance, that included Germany, Austria Hungary, and Italy, and the Triple Entente, which included France, Russia, and the Great Britain. There were also several smaller nations in Europe that were caught in between these two alliances and had to carefully navigate their relationships with both sides. The tensions between these alliances were further increased by several factors, including the rise of nationalism, imperialism, and militarism, as well as various territorial disputes and economic rivalries. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary on June 28, 1914 was the spark that ignited World War I. Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his assassination in Sarajevo, Bosnia, by a Serbian nationalist was the culmination of years of tensions and conflicts between Austria-Hungary and Serbia. The assassination was carried out by a young Bosnian Serb named Gavrilo Princip, who was part of a group known as the Black Hand. The Black Hand was a secret society that was committed to the creation of a greater Serbia and the overthrow of Austro-Hungarian rule in Bosnia and Herzegovina. When Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo, Austria-Hungary saw it as an opportunity to deal with what they saw as a growing Serbian threat. They issued an ultimatum to Serbia demanding that the Serbian government take steps to suppress nationalist movement and cooperate with the Austrian authorities. Serbia refused, and Austria-Hungary declared war on July 28, 1914. Russia, which had long-standing ties with Serbia and saw itself as a protector of the Slavic people in the Balkans, mobilized its army in response. This in turn prompted Germany, which was allied with Austria-Hungary, to declare war on Russia and its ally France. The war quickly spread as other countries became involved. The United Kingdom, which had a treaty with Belgium, declared war on Germany after Germany violated Belgium's neutrality in their invasion. Italy, which had been a member of the Triple Alliance but refused to honor its obligations to fight alongside Germany and Austria-Hungary, eventually joined the Allies in 1915. Over time, other countries joined the war effort on both sides, including the United States, which entered the war in 1917 after Germany resumed unrestricted submarine warfare against American ships. By the end of the war, more than 30 countries were involved in the conflict in one way or another. The war began with a series of swift and brutal campaigns that saw the major powers of Europe pitted against each other in a race for territory and dominance. In the early stages of the war, Germany launched a series of offensives on France and Belgium, known as the Schlieffen Plan, which aimed to quickly defeat the French and then turn their attention to Russia in the east. However, the plan was ultimately unsuccessful as the Germans were held back by a series of determined Allied defenses, including the Battle of Marne in September 1914. The Western Front soon became a stalemate, with both sides dug in and engaged in a brutal and bloody trench warfare. Meanwhile, the East Front saw a series of back and forth battles between the Germans and Austro-Hungarians on one side and the Russians on the other. The Russians suffered a series of defeats in 1915, but they were able to mount a successful offensive in 1916 that pushed the Austro-Hungarians back. The war also saw a number of other campaigns and battles in various parts of the world, including Africa, Asia, and Middle East. The Allies launched a campaign to capture the Gallipoli Peninsula in Turkey in 1915, but this was ultimately unsuccessful. However, the British and French were able to gain control of much of the Middle East, including the oil-rich territories of Iraq and Iran. In 1917, the war took a decisive turn when the United States entered the conflict on the side of the Allies. The arrival of fresh American troops and supplies helped to bolster the Allied war effort, and the Germans began to suffer a series of defeats on both the Western and Eastern fronts. By the fall of 1918, the Allies were on the verge of victory. The Germans, faced with mounting losses and dwindling supplies, agreed to an armistice on November 11, 1918. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ended the war and imposed heavy penalties on Germany and its allies. The aftermath of the war was marked by a number of significant changes in the geopolitical landscape of Europe and the world. The Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman Empire were dissolved, and new nations such as Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and Iraq were created. The Russian Revolution of 1917 led to the establishment of the Soviet Union and the rise of communism as a major force in world politics. After the war ended, an international organization was formed known as the League of Nations, which was tasked to prevent the world from wars in the future. But the organization failed at the task badly as a more deadly conflict was on its way, that is now known as the World War II.